unemployment, there is a difference. Forget about the figures we report called unemployment. Unemployment may deceive you. There's a difference between unemployment and joblessness. There is a word that gets reported is called unemployment. But remember, the definition of unemployment is somebody who has not earned anything for the last 4 weeks, and somebody who has not actively looked for a job for the past few weeks also. But remember, joblessness includes the people who already did that for years, they gave up. That's the biggest in Kenya. So we still have a big problem with joblessness. So we still need a lot of labor-intensive industries. But these labor-intensive industries must not necessarily be in primary production, because we will be trapped in a low-level equilibrium. A farmer in Kenya currently, whatever kind of farming you do, you are trapped in a low-level equilibrium. You will never break even in terms of breaking the ceiling to get wealthy until you upgrade to adding value to your own produce, either alone or as a cooperative. Because it doesn't matter, even if you have 1,000 acres, 10,000 acres, the margins in farming are still too low, and the labor that is needed is still too low, and the dependence on weather is still too high for you to scale. So you still farm, yes, but you farm knowing it's not the head. There has to be another head. There is something called capital accumulation. All the economies we aspire to be like, and there is one I am avoiding to mention because I don't want us to have both of this discussion with those political semantics. There's one country that I would really have wanted to give an example with here, but I'm avoiding it. You know it. Capital accumulation, the reason you guys, you see me talk about shares all the time, and NSE, is because I believe, to a large extent, the economic break in Kenya, NSE has a very big role to play. A developing market has a huge role to play to manufacturing, has a huge role to play in advanced service and technology. How? If you look at all those type balls I talked about South Korea, yes, internal resources were there because the government policy was deliberate. Come to China. At your own time, Google the largest companies in China and check who were their investors when they started. You realize one thing. All the countries that have grown in our generation have grown using other people's technology and money. Something called capital flow is critical and very important. That country I'm not mentioning because it has been politicized in Kenya so much, yet it's a very innocent, good country. If you go to their securities, to their stock market, called SGX, you realize the top 10 companies that are listed there, yes, the government is very dominant, but most of those companies developed and grew using other people's money. Other people's, I don't mean locals, I mean outside money. BYD is currently the largest EV manufacturer in the world. Who are the manufacturers at the early point when they really needed capital? It's Berkshire Hathaway. Who owns Berkshire Hathaway? Warren Buffett from the US. If you go to, you check in your free time, Alibaba, you check all those big tech companies. Capital flow is a critical element. Why do you think the US dominates us so much? The capital markets in the US on the stock side alone is bigger than the GDP of the US. But is it their money? Not necessarily. Because even a Chinese company lists on the New York Stock Exchange just to seem sophisticated. We must develop our capital markets to a level where we are able to attract big pipes of capital inflows, not necessarily outflows, because the capital we have in Kenya is not sufficient to grow at the level where we need to alleviate poverty and we need to uplift so many Kenyans out of poverty. That thing is technology. I don't need to gainsay the point I talked about labor intensive. Labor intensive is the lowest technological adoption level. Then you go to to skill intensive industry. After skill intensive, you usually go to capital intensive. After capital intensive, you go to technology intensive. Is it a coincidence that all the largest companies in China are now technology companies? That all the Forbes list billionaires, top 50, they are all technology companies. And technology doesn't just mean IT. Technology means, for example, if you talk about Dangote and the refinery he built the other day in Nigeria. To me, as much as that is manufacturing, is also technology. You are adopting new ways, more efficient ways of producing efficiently and more cheaply. Let me just read you some statistics here, because I don't want to take more time. There's a company called Ndindi. I'm sure you have heard about it, manufacturing AI chips. Their research and development budget for the year 2025, R&D budget, was 12 billion US dollars, which is 1.5 trillion Kenya shillings. One company, not the entire cost, their R&D, research and development. And I want to read from 3 different economies. In 2024, BYD, sisi tunajua ni kampuni ya gari. So we expect that the expenditure should be about windscreen, batteries and etc. The expenditure on R&D in 2024 was 7 billion US dollars, which is 900 billion Kenya shillings. Samsung, the one I talked about, their R&D budget in 2025, listen to this, was 25 billion US dollars, which is 3.2 trillion. Our entire budget, as Kenya, almost, was one company's research and development budget. That should trigger us on why are they doing this? Because productivity is enhanced by technology. Any company that does not invest in R&D, what you do is to lag behind, or then you remain mundane. Your production becomes archaic. The same you bring it to the economy. So these are the points I just highlight. You can interact with them later. How I think we can reshape the future of some sectors in Kenya. One, of course, is high targeted manufacturing. High targeted manufacturing, high productivity manufacturing. That can only happen again through capital flows that are unrestricted. Number 2 is deliberately fostering entrepreneurial spirit. The biggest problem Kenya has and has been having for years is patronage stifling entrepreneurship. Patronage, that the biggest employer in Kenya becomes the politically, the occupants of political positions. And because we know they are not entrepreneurs, so what are they doing? We allocate capital where it should not be. Because when you become a politipreneur, the money you get, the profits you get becomes possessions. But economies grow when you convert possessions and wealth into capital. A normal entrepreneur, that's how they think. You start a bank called Equity. A normal entrepreneur, how do you think? On how you can scale it. So when you make money, you actually plow it back. Before we know, you've expanded to Tanzania. You've expanded to Burundi. You've expanded to any other place. You are a Dangote. You may be held by policy, that's fine, but you are an entrepreneur. You wake up in the morning to think about creating. So what does Dangote do? You manufacture, you start with importing fertilizer, you make money. After making money, you set up a fertilizer company. then you go to oil import, then you make money, you set up a refinery. You see the sequence. This person is using their profit, not as possessions. Maybe in their bank account, maybe hata hawana pesa. But they are using this possession, this wealth, as capital to generate. But when money falls in the hands that are not entrepreneurial, the wealth becomes possessions. And when we do entrepreneurship, when you are already not an entrepreneur, you not think like one. So you'll make money, stack in the banks, stack it in sacks for a rainy day politically. But this money, if it was in the better hands of an entrepreneur, this person would have made this 1 billion. They would already be setting up a factory to add value onto sweet potatoes to export to some other countries, employing 1,000 people. So that's how now this distorts economic incentives. When money falls where it should be, it becomes capital, and capital stimulates, and capital catalyzes. Capital flow, I will not talk about it, I've already done so. Energy is the last point I want to have. Energy. Because all these points I'm talking about manufacturing, high tech, but also any other associated. And I'm talking about it because sectors that are scalable, sectors that you don't rely on market prices. You know, when an economy is trapped in primary production like agriculture, you are trapped in something called market prices. Oh, sell your maize in market prices. But a person manufacturing a phone, they determine how much they sell to us, not based on market price, because you can differentiate your products. In farming, you can't. Anyway, that's another point for another day. Kenya currently produces around 3,000 megawatts of, roughly, 3,000 megawatts of energy. 3,000. We are actually not serious. We are not even near serious. South Korea, in manufacturing, 50 times is generating. Their installed capacity is over 50 times that of Kenya. Yet our populations are the same. Just think about that. Energy